Welcome to part 3 of supply stations and how they work. We're going to take a look at the max filter. It's a brilliant circuit. I really like it, but it's got some drawbacks and you may not like it. Regardless, I want to show it to you because I think it's really neat, and if you do like circuits, you might find this really useful for something else. Okay, before we jump in, the stations are completely vanilla, but we're using a couple of mods to help illustrate how everything works. One is Magic Lamp. Shows us the inner workings of the circuit network without having to mouse over everything all at once. Excellent. We're using editor extensions to spread power around, keep everything powered yet tidy. There's no power poles cluttering everything. And we're using the map editor so that we can control time very precisely. That's how I can move in one tick increments. Okay. This is the intermediate station, just like we had in part 2. We're going to build on this. That's why we start with this each time. There's nothing wrong with these components, it's just that there's not enough. Okay, so we still need to use these to distribute signals to the train, to the inserters to load onto the train, and we still need these combinators to create our demand signal. And this guy, of course, just releases the train. So let's just really quick shuffle these around a little bit to some more appropriate locations. We'll just cut a couple of wires here, here. Excellent. Okay, so here's our demand signals. Here's where we distribute the filter demand to the inserters. Let's paste our filter right there. Alright, so we are looking for the max signal. Now, the design philosophy behind this circuit is it will take a look at our loadout. It will figure out the average value of all these signals, and it will drop off all of the signals below the average, and then it will figure out the average of the remaining signals and drop off what's below the average, and it'll keep doing this until there's only one signal remaining, and that will be the max value signal. So the first round, it's going to be uranium ammo. So let's see what these magic lamps are showing us. This first one on the green wire, this is their demand signal. These are just some signals that we want to load on the train. It's just here to kind of watch what's going on. This one right here is showing us some of the filtering, and these other ones are showing us various stages in the calculation for the average. So we have our demand signal coming in here to the first combinator. We'll have our filter demand signal coming out right here to be distributed to the inserters. Okay, in, out. Alrighty, so let's start at the beginning where the signals are coming in. This combinator looks at each signal that is greater than or equal to S. Now, for the purposes of this circuit, S is going to be our average. It's also going to be used to set the stack sizes on our inserters. We can see right here, S, set stack size. But for now, S represents the average. Okay, so each signal that is greater than or equal to S, well, we don't have an S. That means that everything satisfies this condition. So we have 12 signals in our loadout. They will all be forwarded, and they will all be forwarded down here to these two combinators at the exact same time. This one is looking at each of those signals that does not equal S, because we do not want the S in our average calculation. And we have, we will turn each signal into N1, and that will get summed together, and this will tell us how many signals there are, the number of signals. We know that there are 12, so N is going to be equal to 12, and 1 for each. Right. Now the next one here, we'll look at each signal that does not equal S, again, because we don't want the average in the calculation. Each signal that does not equal S, turn it into a T, and add it together. That's what's going to happen here. Now we saw this before, it was a problem when we were trying to set stack sizes. We would have, say, each signal that's greater than 0 output S. It would add them all together, and we didn't want that, but we do now. We want to know what the total is, because we're just going to calculate the mean, the average, and that's going to be the total T divided by the number N of signals. So that's going to be great. We're going to have 12 signals, and our total is going to be 2,585. But before we look at that, this little guy right here is doing one extra little thing, and this is just to protect us from some edge cases. Let's say that we had the average coming around. We don't want the average to, by chance, equal one of our demand signals, because that demand will be ignored. If there's any signal that is equal to S, it will also be ignored. So this holds the S signal really low, so it is never a problem with the calculation. Okay, so we said N would be 12 and T would be 2585, and there they are. So we have our 12 signals, and the sum total of those signals is 2585. Now, T divided by N is going to be 215. Here is our average. Let's calculate it right here. T divided by N, give me an S. Okay, so we have gone around the circuit once. We now have an S value. So this combinator, each that is greater than or equal to S, is only going to output 3 values. We can see them on the right: uranium ammo, repair pack, and blue belt. Right? Out of our 12 signals, there are only 3, 1, 2, 3, that are greater than the average. So we send those 3 on. We can see them right here in the input. N is now going to be equal to 3. T is going to be equal to 1800. And we can see right here our S value as it currently stands. So N is 3, T is 1800, the average is therefore 600. Now what signals are greater than or equal to the average 600? Well, it's only going to be one. It's going to be uranium ammo. Nothing else is over 600. So now we have one signal. N is equal to 1. T is equal to 1000, because the total value of the one signal is 1000 uranium ammo. 1000 divided by 1, that's pretty easy. That's 1000. And so now we know what our max signal is. The average is equal to each, or rather, each is equal to the average. So we just output them to be distributed amongst the inserters. And so just like before, each divided by 10 general inserters, and each modulo 10 to capture the remainder or any rounding errors, and we'll send it off to this little guy, and they will just start loading. Now, this circuit is in equilibrium. I can go tick, 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 tick. Nothing changes, because uranium ammo is still equal to 1000. It's still the highest signal. Nothing's changed until the train rolls around the corner. So let's get that train around the corner. Off you go. Okay, so the train has stopped. The inserters obviously have their filters set. They are swinging, and the items are on the train. Now, the demand is going to drop below 1000. Let's drop to 880. 880 is not equal to or greater than the average 1000. So that means that this combinator is outputting only the S signal, but we know that these two combinators are only looking at signals that are not S. Anything but S. So that means that this combinator doesn't see anything, and this combinator doesn't see anything. So T is 0 and N is 0, and 0 divided by 0 up here is 0. Now with no S signal present, we've essentially restarted the circuit. We're going to recalculate the average all over again. Okay, so we forward our 12 signals. The 12 signals total up to 2465. T divided by N is 205. And now we drop off all the signals that are less than 205. It's the same as it was before. It's blue belt, repair pack, uranium ammo. So we have our 3 signals. Total value is 1680. The average is 560. Anything above 560, you bet, uranium ammo at 880. That's our only signal. And so we pass that on to be distributed to the inserters. And off they go. Now, if you are watching the inserters, as we're going to do for this round, inserters are right now ready to pick up the next item. Unfortunately, we're not done calculating the max signal, right? We're several ticks away from that, actually. So what are the inserters going to do? Nothing. They're going to sit there and wait until they are given a signal to work with. So all this time is just being wasted as we wait for this circuit to calculate. That doesn't sound very advanced. It kind of is, I guess. You know, this is a pretty cool circuit, but it's not quite working ideally. So we needed to speed it up. But we're not going to do that just yet. I just wanted you to know that I know that this isn't working at full pace. So before we get to that, something else I want to look at. Let's see if we can pause this at just the right time, because I want to see what happens when there's more than one signal coming in that happens to be the maximum value. So we're going to progress just a little bit here. Hopefully I don't make any mistakes. Oh, I didn't. Look at that. We are now outputting two signals that are equal to the maximum, or equal to the average, right? These are two max signals, red belts and gun turrets. Well, what are the inserters going to pick up first? I can tell you right now it's going to be red belts. We're on tab 1, red belts are in position 6, and gun turrets are way over on tab 4, past all these other items, and it's way down here. The inserters break ties by just picking whichever signal comes first in the list. We have a tie between red belts and gun turrets. Red belts would be chosen first. There it is, red belt. So they're going to swing. They'll put it in the train. Red belt is no longer one of the max signals. It falls away. The inserters switch over to gun turret. Okay, cool. So we don't really care when multiple signals come in. So, before we try and make the circuit faster, let's see how long the circuit's actually taking to run. 864. Okay, now the index filter ran at about 775. So this is a little bit slower. Now we can make this faster. And the reason why it's slower is because we have to wait until the items are on the train before we can recalculate the average. But what if we just took the hand contents of these inserters on the red wire? That way we're not getting confused with the demand signals coming in the back on the green wire here. What if we just took this red wire and we set read hand contents? And if we set that to hold and we multiply it by -1, whilst these inserters have something in their hands, it will be forcing the circuit to recalculate. And then once it's on the train, out of their hands, this inserter will forget, this combinator will forget about it because it's no longer there, and this combinator will take it over because now it's on the train. So that sounds pretty good. Let's try that out. So hold, let's just go ahead and copy that setting over to all these guys. Good. So now how fast is it going to go? We'll bring that train around. We'll watch it iterate through the maximum signals. Working away like a champ. I'm not seeing any inserters that are waiting. It's just going quickly. 824. So this is an average, right? Because we just went through twice. So it is faster. Now, we've made it faster, but I'm actually not too concerned about how fast it is like this. And that's because there's a fatal flaw hiding in here. And you won't see it until one of these boxes runs out of items to load. And the reason why is because the inserters will be out of sync. And this is a really significant problem. And rather than describe it, I'm just going to show it to you first. And I'm going to force the inserters to be way out of sync. And we've already got a problem. Okay, I've exaggerated a little bit by picking up all the items out of these chests, but this can happen if you can't guarantee that these boxes always have a train's load in them. It can be done, but it's irritating. So what's the problem? Well, there's only supposed to be 200 of these red belts, and there's a lot more than 200 of these red belts on the train. So what's going on here? Well, these inserters don't care where the signals come from, just that they come in. So now that we've connected them all on the red wire, and we're reading their hand contents on hold, they're continuously transmitting to each other what they're holding. So they're also seeing it on the green wire, now that I mention it. So they see red belt 60 here, and they see red belt 60 here, they see a stack size 20, and they see gun turret. Now what they're supposed to be doing is loading the gun turret. You can see right here, we're outputting gun turret. But they're not loading gun turret because red belt comes first in the list. So they're breaking the tie and they're loading the red belts first. And because the stack size doesn't change, because the gun turrets aren't being loaded, the demand isn't changing, they just keep swinging. And they're just going to keep on loading that train with red belts, and we have a small disaster on our hands. So why the hell did I bother showing you this ridiculous circuit if it's just going to be a disaster? Well, I wanted to show you why this isn't necessarily the best way to do it first, and then I'll show you something better. The reason why I'm doing that is because, well, the solution isn't perfectly intuitive, but that's okay. That's why I'm here, right? To try and explain some of this stuff so that it's a little bit easier to understand. So just give me a second to reset the station here. Alrighty. So, with the station reset, how are we going to overcome this? Because this doesn't work. We don't like this. Well, let's let that train unload. What we're going to do, clear that out too, because that's a joke. What we're going to do is paste down just a couple of combinators right here. Okay, so now what are we doing? Well, the problem that we were running into is that the inserters were communicating with each other, and they're not smart enough to do that intelligently, right? So instead of hold, we need to use pulse. So instead of continuously sending out the signal that they are holding, they're just going to do it for one tick. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that signal that they send out, we'll multiply it by -1, and we'll send it to this combinator, which is a memory cell, and it's going to remember each signal that is less than 0, and it will output it to itself. Right? That's how it remembers. So as soon as they pick something up, it comes into the memory cell, and we hold onto that negative signal, and we send it on this wire to the average circuit, which will force it to recalculate, just like it did before, right? Awesome. Now, we don't want to remember that signal forever. We need to cancel that out in some way. And so we will do that on the red wire right here, coming from the train station. That will be the positive train contents, and it will come into the memory. It will cancel out, but that's also a continuous signal, and so we need to turn it into a pulse by canceling it out as well. I know we're doing a lot here, just stick with me. And we cancel it out with this arithmetic, which is doing each multiplied by -1. And so what happens is both of these get the positive train contents at the same time. The memory is canceled out, and one tick later, the arithmetic combinator sends out a signal to cancel the positive train contents. And so the result is, even though there's continuous signals coming into this decider, it won't see them. They cancel each other out. Now finally, there's this combinator that's listening for the train depart condition, which is checkmark. So when demand equals 0, when everything equals 0, output checkmark. This combinator will hear that, and it will output everything. And the everything that it is outputting is the loadout. And the reason why is because when the train leaves, and there's no longer a positive signal coming in, for one extra tick, this arithmetic combinator will be outputting the negative train contents. but there's nothing to cancel out anymore. So the negative signals come into this memory cell and they stick around because they're no longer being canceled out. So this little guy will fix that. Now on the final version, we can actually do this with one less combinator, and we will. But for now, just so you can see it, here it is. So that was a long, confusing, rambling thing. Let's just see this run really quick. Train comes in. And it stops, and we pick up uranium ammo. Alright, so they've picked it up. We see it, turn it into a negative. It comes into this memory cell. We're now outputting negative 120 uranium ammo. That forces the uranium ammo signal below the average so that we can start recalculating before these items are on the train. And we hold that signal, that negative 120, until the items are on the train. Now the positive signal from the train comes into memory and cancels it out. You can see that the input signal is already gone. It's already disappeared. It's been canceled out. And one tick later, this arithmetic combinator will output a signal to cancel the positive train signals. And there it is. And the decider sees nothing. Blissful nothing. And it will stay this way in harmony until the next swing is picked up, which has already been set. It's ready to go, just like when we were doing it before, only this time it's a lot more robust. So we can see the signal is just hanging out for just a few ticks while the inserters do their thing. And notice how these inserters are out of sync. That's because they're still missing train contents in the chests. Will the circuit be able to handle that? Now it's going to take a little bit longer as they try to get up to speed. Or not as they try to get up to speed, but as they try to overcome the challenge. 1280. So yeah, they did it. They managed to load the train even though they were out of sync. This is now a much more robust solution. It works very quickly. It's brilliant. Okay, now we could sit here and watch this and find out the speed of it, but what we're really interested in with the advanced loaders is the speed of two-wagon or multiple wagon supply trains. So let's just leave that circuit alone. And here we have everything smashed together on a demo circuit, right? This is all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff, except we've actually dropped one of the combinators for that negative train contents. So that's good. And we've just kind of brought everything in tight so that we can keep the wires somewhat tidy. So it's not a crazy bird's nest. Like all these crisscrossing wires, I try to avoid that as much as possible because it just looks like hell. So this station should be ready to go. It's set up just like the other one was, only now we've got multiple wagons. Oh, actually there is an extra guy right here. So this one, when it sees green equals 1 from this rail signal, it will output everything, and everything for this guy is going to be the train loadout, and it sends it to be distributed among the inserters. This signal is only green when there is no train within this block. So these chests will be preloaded to make sure they're ready to go for when the train shows up, and we've added in these extra combinators so that even if there is a problem, this station can handle it, right? It's robust. So, enough yabbering. Let's see how this performs. Now it's going to be just slightly slower than a single wagon variant, just because this train is hauling extra wagons. Look at all those signals disappearing, getting loaded onto the train with perfect precision, no errors being corrected. 792, and I think this will actually drop by 1. So this is actually really good. The index filter version, that was running at about 775, so technically, just a little bit faster than this. about 1/3 of a second, right? It's not a lot of time. But the advantage that we have here is that we're using chunkless combinators. So what do we have here per wagon? We have 5 deciders, 3 arithmetics, and 2 constants. So technically 10 combinators. Okay, that's per wagon. And then shared, we have 6. So this overall layout is 10 per wagon plus 6. That means that even if we were only using a single wagon, we're using fewer total combinators than the index filter version. And that one was 13 plus 2. And so this effect grows the more wagons you have. 2 wagons is a clear advantage because that would be 26 here versus 30 for the index filter version. So the net reduction in combinators just keeps getting better. And we can also see that this is nice and consistent. This train is loading just as we would expect, even over multiple passes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. One more difference actually, now that I see it. We used to have the error correction / trash inserter combinator over here for each wagon, and now we've moved it over here to the front of the train so it can be shared amongst all wagons. It works in exactly the same way. The the loadout signals are inverted by each times -1, and then these trash inserters are seeing the positive train signals on the green wire that travels over the power poles from the station. So yeah, that's it. Strengths and weaknesses of this. Weaknesses, it's a little harder to understand. It's a little bit slower, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the weaknesses. The strengths of it, it doesn't care if there's a bunch of signals that have no demand. The index filter in comparison has to iterate through every position, whereas this one's just going to find whatever's biggest and slam it on the train. So this is still a competitive solution. Yeah, for the most part, I'm actually really happy with this circuit. I like it quite a bit, and I hope you do too. So if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please let me know, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. We'll talk about the stack size filter, and I think you'll like that a lot more than both this version, the max signal filter, and the index filter. So I'll see you then.